I always thought the creepiest part of late-night TV was the commercials, until the TV started talking to me. It's a Tuesday, or maybe it's Wednesday. Honestly, I'm not sure anymore. The days blur together when you live alone. I work from home most of the time and I don't get out much. If I'm not working, I'm here on the couch in front of the TV, zoning out to something comforting. The kind of garbage shows that are more background noise than entertainment. It's familiar, mindless, like static for my brain. That night was no different. I had the TV on, volume low, just enough to drown out the dead silence of my apartment. I remember staring blankly at the screen. Some cooking competition was on. Chefs yelling about brulees and undercooked lamb. I wasn't really watching. I was half asleep, just letting the flickering light lull me into that twilight zone between wakefulness and dreaming. My apartment was dark except for the glow of the TV. I'd left the lamp off. I liked it that way. It felt cozy, in a lonely sort of way. You know what I mean? Like a blanket you've wrapped yourself in too tightly. The sound of pots clattering and chefs shouting slurred into white noise. My eyelids were heavy. I think I even drooled a little. I didn't fight it. I let myself drift off. And then, suddenly I was awake. I don't remember what woke me, but the second my eyes opened, I knew something felt wrong. My apartment was silent. Not quiet, silent. It took me a few seconds to realize the TV wasn't playing anymore. Instead, the screen was a mess of gray static, a harsh buzzing sound pouring from the speakers. It wasn't like normal TV static, at least not the kind I remember from when I was a kid. There was something sharp about it, like the noise was cutting into the silence. My head was pounding. I blinked, trying to adjust to the room. The clock on my TV stand caught my eye. 3:13 nachts. I don't know why that stood out to me. It wasn't that late. I mean, it's late, but I'd stayed up far later plenty of times before. Still, something about the numbers felt off. Almost intentional. I groaned and rubbed my eyes. My throat was dry. My body felt heavy, like I'd been knocked out instead of just falling asleep. I searched for the remote, patting at the couch cushions, too tired to care about the static, but annoyed enough to want it gone. And then the TV screen flickered. Just for a second, the static cut out, and there was something. A picture. A face. It was gone before I could register it. Just a frame, like someone splicing a single shot into a movie reel. But I swear, in that flash of a second, I saw someone staring at me. Not like an actor or a character. No, this was someone looking at me through the screen. Wide eyes. Hollow expression. Almost like they were sitting right there, watching me back. I froze. My hands stopped mid-search. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. What the hell? I whispered to no one. The static returned, loud and constant. I sat there for a moment, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it, that I was just groggy. People see weird things when they're half asleep. It's normal, right? Just my brain playing tricks on me. I grabbed the remote off the floor, thumbed the power button, and the TV went dark. I sighed and leaned back into the couch, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling twisting in my gut. It didn't last long. The TV turned itself back on. I stared at it, dumbfounded. It wasn't static this time. The screen flickered back to life, but it wasn't the cooking competition I'd fallen asleep to earlier. It wasn't even a channel I recognized. The screen showed a room. Dark. Unfamiliar. The camera was positioned in a corner, angled downward like a security feed. There was a single chair in the middle of the frame, illuminated by a faint yellow light. The rest of the room was in shadows. I frowned and checked the remote again, clicking through the buttons. Nothing. No channels, no menu. The screen just stayed fixed on that chair. My stomach turned. What the hell is this? I muttered, and then the audio kicked in. It started as a low hum, distant like machinery rumbling far away. It grew louder, building slowly until it settled into an uncomfortable buzzing sound, almost like the static from before, but this time it felt purposeful. The camera angle changed. Closer now, the chair taking up most of the frame. I squinted at the screen, leaning forward without realizing it. The buzzing sound seemed to pulse like it was syncing up with my heartbeat. I blinked. The screen flickered again. There was someone sitting in the chair. I jerked back. It was a man, or I think it was a man. The figure was slumped over, their head hanging low, so I couldn't see their face. They were wearing some kind of loose, gray clothing. Their hands rested on their knees, unmoving. For a moment, I just stared. My brain couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. It had to be some weird art film, right? Or maybe a prank, a late-night performance piece? I waited for something to happen, but the figure stayed completely still. The longer I watched, the more I noticed strange details. The lighting in the room was wrong. Shadows stretched in ways that didn't make sense. The walls in the background seemed warped, almost like the room wasn't really a room at all. And then the figure moved. It was subtle, a twitch of the head, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. Their shoulders rose and fell, like they'd taken a deep breath. The buzzing sound on the TV grew louder. I reached for the remote again, my hand trembling. I pressed the power button. Nothing. The screen stayed on. I tried changing the channel. Nothing. I even unplugged the TV, yanking the cord out of the wall in one panic motion. The screen went black. I exhaled shakily, staring at the dark TV, my mind racing. And then, slowly, impossibly, the TV turned itself back on. The screen flickered. The chair was empty now. I froze. My ears were ringing. That's when I heard it. From somewhere behind me, in the dark of my apartment. A low, rhythmic creaking. The creaking sound behind me stopped as suddenly as it had started. I turned my head slowly, my breath caught in my chest. My apartment was pitch black except for the faint glow of the TV screen. I couldn't see anything in the room's corners. Just shadows pooling like dark water. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my temples. "It's nothing," I whispered. My voice cracked on the words. "It's nothing." The TV buzzed again, sharp and loud. My head snapped back toward it just as the static melted away. The screen didn't go black this time, and it wasn't empty. A grimy, dimly lit room flickered into view. It looked like an unfinished basement or a storage room. The walls were concrete, stained with streaks of dark grime, and there were no windows. The air looked thick, oppressive, like it smelled bad. In the center of the room, a single spotlight shone down, casting a pale yellow glow onto an old, rusted chair. Someone was in the chair. At first, I couldn't tell much about them. They were slumped forward, their hands bound behind their back with thick, dark rope. A hood covered their head, the fabric loose and wrinkled. Their breathing was loud and ragged. It echoed faintly through the speakers of my TV. "What the hell?" I muttered under my breath. Before I could process anything, a voice erupted from the speakers. "Welcome back to tonight's episode." The voice was loud, unnervingly cheerful, like a game show announcer pumped full of amphetamines. But something was off. It was distorted, warbling, and too mechanical, like it was being played through a broken tape recorder. I flinched at the sound, my hand instinctively gripping the arm of the couch. The voice laughed, a hollow, robotic noise that didn't sound human at all. "Tonight's contestant has been chosen, and you, dear audience, will decide their fate." The camera cut to a closer shot of the person in the chair. I could see now that their chest was rising and falling rapidly. They were shaking, either from fear or cold. Maybe both. The ropes dug deep into their wrists. I blinked at the screen, trying to understand what I was watching. Some kind of sick prank show? A dark late-night horror special? Maybe even one of those edgy internet streams I'd heard about but never wanted to see. My throat felt dry. "This can't be real," I whispered to myself. The voice returned, cheerful as ever. "Audience participation is our favorite part of the show. Let's bring up tonight's options." Two giant buttons appeared at the bottom of the screen, as if they were part of a virtual game overlay. Save, punish. I stared at them, my stomach twisting into knots. This wasn't funny. Whatever this was, it had gone too far. A series of numbers began flashing at the bottom of the screen. They looked like a live vote tally. First, both options hovered at 0, but almost immediately, the numbers began climbing. Save, 34. Punish, 168. "What the hell is this?" I said aloud, a little too sharply. The punish votes climbed at an alarming rate, the numbers doubling, tripling. Within seconds. Save, 89. Punish, 784. My palms started to sweat. It had to be staged. It had to be some twisted, overly elaborate hoax. I grabbed the remote and jammed the power button. Nothing happened. I tried again. Click, click, click. The screen stayed on. I hit the input button, the channel button, every damn button I could find. The image flickered for half a second like it was glitching, but the program would not change. The vote counter continued to rise. It looks like our audience has made their choice, the voice crooned, delighted. I sat there, frozen, as the numbers on the punish option skyrocketed past 2,000. A timer appeared at the top of the screen, counting down from 30 seconds. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the TV. The person in the chair began to move, squirming against their bonds, their muffled breathing growing louder and more panicked. I watched, horrified, as they began shaking their head beneath the hood. They were trying to plead. I felt bile rise in my throat. Stop it, I mumbled at the screen. This isn't funny. Just stop. The camera zoomed in, closer and closer, until I could see the rise and fall of the victim's shoulders. My heart hammered against my ribs, and then I saw it. I don't know how I missed it before, but now that the camera was close enough, I noticed the victim's shirt, a plain white t-shirt. It was wrinkled and stained, but there was something about it that made my skin crawl. It looked like one of mine. I shook my head violently, shoving the thought away. No, that wasn't possible. It was just a coincidence, a trick of the mind. The voice returned, chipper and upbeat. Voting is closed. Let's see what happens next. The countdown hit midnight. A loud clunk echoed through the speakers, and the spotlight on the chair flickered. The victim jolted upright, their breathing turning into ragged screams muffled by whatever was covering their mouth. They thrashed against the ropes, their entire body convulsing. The camera stayed fixed on them as something unseen happened. I couldn't tell what. There were no weapons or people visible, but whatever was happening, it was hurting them. Badly. I grabbed the remote again, frantically slamming every button I could find. Stop! Stop! I screamed at the TV. My voice broke. The screen cut to static. I sat there, frozen, breathing hard, the remote slipping from my fingers. My entire body was trembling. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. Before I could convince myself to get up, the static began to clear. The screen flickered, and the grimy room reappeared. The chair was empty now. The distorted voice returned, calmer this time. And now, let's meet our next contestant. The camera panned slowly across the room and stopped. My blood ran cold. There on the far wall hung a mirror, a dirty, cracked mirror. And in that mirror, staring back, was me. I couldn't breathe. The reflection of myself on that screen, dirty, cracked, staring, felt like it was wrong. Not like a normal mirror. Not like something real. I leaned forward, squinting, trying to make sense of it. My mind was screaming at me to look away, but I couldn't. I was frozen. And then the voice came back. Welcome back, dear audience. You've spoken loud and clear. Let's keep the fun going, shall we? The screen cut back to the empty chair, the spotlight now brighter, burning a stark yellow that hurt my eyes. The camera angle shifted again, closer, lower, intimate. The ropes were still there, hanging loosely where the victim had been just minutes before. But the air in the room felt thicker now. The atmosphere oozed out of the TV, as if the stench of whatever horror had unfolded was seeping into my living room. I blinked, trying to tear my gaze away, but something had changed. In the bottom corner of the screen, small text scrolled in bright red letters. Live feed, audience decides. Live. No, this had to be a joke, a prank, a viral campaign for some horror movie. Anything but what it felt like. I kept repeating that to myself like a mantra, even as my stomach twisted tighter and tighter. It's fake. It has to be fake. The voice, warped, joyful, hideous, returned. But wait, what's a show without stakes? What's a game without a little participation? The screen glitched violently. Black bars rippled across the picture like waves, and then the chair was no longer empty. There was someone else sitting there now, bound, hooded, shaking. I shot up from the couch, my legs wobbling like jelly. Iwi sparat. My voice barely made a sound. No. The person in the chair was trembling harder than the last one. It was subtle at first, but then the shaking grew violent, like they were trying to scream, to cry, to beg. My hands were clenched in a fist so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Audience, you know the drill. Save or punish. Cast your votes now. The buttons reappeared at the bottom of the screen. Save in pale blue. Punish in glaring red. I wanted to turn it off. I needed to turn it off. But I couldn't. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. The vote counter flashed into life. The numbers jumped instantly. Save for punish, 271. I shouted, my voice cracking. Stop! Stop! I lunged for the TV, my fingers scrambling to hit the power button, but the screen didn't react. I slammed my fist against it, the plastic rattling under the force, but the image didn't flicker. Save 12. Punish, 579. The camera panned in closer, a sickening zoom that made the picture look warped and stretched. The person's head twitched beneath the hood, as if they'd heard something. And then the distorted voice spoke again, but this time it was different. Slower, colder, like it was speaking directly to me. And now, let's call tonight's lucky contestant to decide their fate. My blood turned to ice. From somewhere deep in the silence of my apartment, my phone rang. It started as a soft vibration, a buzzing sound that seemed to crawl up my spine. Then the ringtone blared through the room, unnervingly loud, as though the walls themselves were screaming at me. I froze, every nerve in my body on fire. My phone was on the coffee table, screen lighting up in the dark. The sound didn't stop. Burring, burring. I stared at it, my body rooted in place. The screen glowed bright against the shadows, and the caller ID flashed. No name, but underneath, where the number should have been, was something else. Live feed. I stumbled back, knocking into the side of the couch. My phone kept ringing, louder and louder, echoing through the silence. On the TV, the victim's head lifted slightly. Just a small tilt upward, but I saw it. The hooded figure froze mid-shake, as though they were listening to my phone ring. No, I said, my voice shaking. No, this isn't happening. This isn't real. The phone screamed again, burring. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was panic. Maybe I just wanted it to stop. My hand shot out, fingers trembling as I snatched up the phone and pressed it to my ear. I didn't say anything. For a second, all I heard was dead silence. Then breathing, slow, ragged breathing. Hello? I croaked. My voice sounded alien to me, small, hollow, afraid. The distorted voice from the TV filled my ear, loud and warbled, as if the sound was coming from inside my head. Congratulations. It's your turn to play. My knees buckled, and I collapsed onto the floor, the phone still clutched to my ear. Please, I whispered, tears blurring my vision. Please stop this. I don't want to play. I don't want any of this. The voice ignored me. The rules are simple. You decide, save or punish. But choose wisely. Time is running out. A countdown timer appeared on the TV screen, bright red numbers ticking down from 30:00. I stared at it, my chest heaving. The camera zoomed in closer on the victim, their body trembling violently now. They were shaking their head, their shoulders jerking with muffled sobs. The voice whispered into my ear again, slow and deliberate. They're waiting for you. Make your choice. I looked back at the TV, tears streaming down my face. And in that moment, as the camera moved even closer, I saw something that made my blood freeze. The ropes, the trembling body, the hood. A thin, pale scar peeked out from beneath the edge of the hood, trailing down the side of the victim's neck. I knew that scar. I had seen it in the mirror every day for the past 12 years. The person in the chair was me. My phone slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a dull clunk. The voice on the other end started laughing, distorted, warped, endless. On the screen, the countdown continued. 27:43, 27:42, 27:41. The phone lay on the floor, the distorted laughter still leaking out of the speaker like poison. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My entire body felt like it was caught between paralysis and adrenaline. my mind screaming at me to do something. Anything, but my limbs refused to obey. On the TV, the countdown ticked down, bright red numbers flashing. 27:25, 27:24, 27:23. The laughter finally stopped, replaced by a low, humming silence. Then the voice returned. Calm now. Patient. Here's how it works, contestant. I flinched, as if it could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The screen flickered and warped as the host's words oozed through the speakers, like a smile you could hear. You've been chosen to decide the fate of tonight's contestant. Save or punish. It's all up to you. But be warned, refusal to play comes with its own consequences. I felt like I was going to vomit. My chest was heaving, sweat pouring down my temples as I gawked at the TV. Refusal. I muttered to myself, shaking my head violently. I don't want to play this sick game. I didn't ask for this. The distorted voice didn't stop. Now let's make it fun, shall we? Let's raise the stakes. The image on the screen flickered violently again. The grimy basement, the hooded figure, all of it disappeared. I barely had time to process what was happening before the screen showed. My apartment. My blood turned to ice. The camera angle was identical to how I saw the room now. The couch, the coffee table, the dim glow of the TV casting weak shadows across the floor. And there, in the center of the screen, was me. I gasped and stumbled back, crashing into the side of the couch. My reflection on the TV sat hunched forward, eyes wide, mouth hanging open. I watched myself blink, watched my chest rise and fall in time with my breath. Oh, you whispered. No. I turned to look behind me, but there was nothing there. No camera, no light, nothing that could be broadcasting my image. And yet there I was, sitting on the screen, trapped like an insect under glass. The voice came again, mocking now. Smile. You're live. I backed into the corner of the room, my shaking hands pressed against the wall as if I could disappear into it. I kept staring at the screen, at myself on the couch, when suddenly, knock. A soft, rhythmic knock. I froze. My gaze snapped toward the front door. Knock. It was quiet but deliberate, like someone tapping a drumstick against wood. I looked back at the TV and felt my stomach drop. The knocking on the door matched perfectly with the countdown timer. 24:15, 24:14, 24:13. My breathing turned into shallow gasps. I couldn't move. My brain was stuck on one loop. It's not real. It's not real. It can't be real. Knock. Knock. I jumped at the sound. This time it was louder, insistent. The knocking vibrated through the room like a heartbeat, low and rhythmic. On the TV, the host laughed. Tick-tock. Time is running out, contestant. Make your choice. I couldn't stop myself. I stumbled toward the door, almost tripping over the coffee table. My legs felt heavy and weak, but I had to see. I had to know. As I reached the door, I paused. My hand hovered over the handle, trembling so hard I thought it would fall off. The knocking stopped. I pressed my eye to the peephole, dread curdling in my stomach. Nothing. The hallway outside was empty. My shoulders sagged, relief mixing with a sick, dizzying confusion. I stayed there, staring through the peephole, willing myself to believe it was all in my head. But then, knock, knock, knock. The sound came from inside the apartment now. I staggered backward, gasping, my head whipping toward the TV. The screen still showed me, standing by the door, a mirror image of exactly where I was. But now there was something else. A shadow moved behind me. I spun around, heart slamming against my ribs, but the apartment was empty. The same shadows stretched along the walls. The air felt suffocating, heavy and wrong. The distorted voice crackled through the speakers. You're wasting time. Contestant, save or punish. The choice is yours. The knocking began again, this time faster, louder, pounding in sync with my racing heartbeat. I couldn't take it anymore. Stop it, I screamed at the TV. I'll play. I'll play your damn game. The voice went silent. The knocking stopped. The screen flickered. The image of my apartment disappeared, replaced once more by the grimy basement. The hooded figure sat in the chair, their shoulders heaving, muffled sobs echoing faintly through the speakers. The buttons reappeared at the bottom of the screen. Save. Punish. The countdown continued. 15:07. 15:06. 15:05. I dropped to my knees in front of the TV, my hands pressed to my face as I shook. Tears burned my eyes. I didn't know what was real anymore. What was a game? What was in my head? But I had to end it. I looked up at the screen, my voice shaking. Save. The second I said it, I regretted it. The host's voice erupted with gleeful laughter, warped and mechanical, a sound that echoed through the room like grinding metal. Too late, contestant. You chose save, but the audience didn't agree. The screen flashed red. The victim in the chair began to thrash violently, muffled screams filling the room as if they were right there with me. I screamed along with them, pounding my fists against the floor. No, stop. I said save. The camera zoomed in on the victim's hood as they convulsed. The ropes cut into their skin, dark blood seeping through the fabric of their clothes. I couldn't look away. My voice gave out, hoarse and broken. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the screen went black. Silence. The phone on the floor buzzed once and went dead. The apartment was still. The only sound was my ragged breathing as I lay curled on the floor, shaking violently. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Seconds? Minutes? Hours? Finally, the TV crackled back to life, just a low hiss of static. But this time I didn't look up. I didn't dare. The silence was worse than the noise. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, my knees pulled to my chest, the room around me impossibly still. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I barely breathed. It felt like if I so much as twitched, something would happen. Something would see me. The TV screen was black now, but the faint outline of its reflection hovered in the dark like an open mouth, waiting for me to look directly at it again. The phone lay a few feet away, its screen dark and dead. I tried to piece together what had just happened, but my mind couldn't hold on to any of it. The voice, the choices, the figure in the chair, the screen showing me. Every time I thought I understood something, the logic slipped through my fingers like smoke. I rubbed my hands over my face hard, trying to wake myself up from whatever nightmare this was. That's what it had to be, a nightmare. Or a breakdown. Maybe I was sick, hallucinating. Sleep deprivation does weird things to the mind, right? I didn't believe it, but I clung to the thought like a lifeline. Hours passed, at least I think they did. Slowly, light began creeping through the slats of my blinds. The soft orange glow of dawn washed over the apartment, and for a moment, the world felt real again. The TV was off. The phone was silent. I stayed on the floor, staring blankly at the empty screen, too afraid to move. I was shaking uncontrollably, my limbs weak, my throat raw from screaming. I didn't know what time it was. Maybe 6 a.m.? 7? The clock on my TV stand read 3:13 a.m. again, but I didn't trust it. I didn't trust anything in the room anymore. The sunlight pushed further into the apartment, chasing shadows back into corners. It looked so normal, so safe. It's over, I whispered. My voice was hoarse, more like a rasp than anything human. It's over. I forced myself to move, every motion stiff and jerky, like I was learning how to use my body again. I reached for my phone and pressed the power button. Nothing. The screen stayed dark, dead, just like the TV. I swallowed hard. Maybe it had all been some kind of stress-induced psychotic episode. Maybe the TV fried itself, and my brain had short-circuited with it. I climbed onto the couch and sat there, knees pulled up, hugging my arms around myself. The silence in the apartment wasn't comforting, but it was better than the noise had been. I stared at the blank TV, convinced that the moment I looked away, it would turn itself back on. It didn't. I sat like that for what felt like hours, and the sun rose higher, painting the walls in gold. Birds chirped faintly outside. A car door slammed somewhere in the distance. The sounds of the normal world bled in through the windows, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let out a shaky breath. I was okay. This was okay. Maybe I'd lost a few hours, maybe even my mind for a little while, but the worst of it was over. And then I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible bzzzt. The hairs on my arms stood up. I sat perfectly still, my eyes locked onto the black screen. Bzzzt. No, it wasn't real. Bzzzt. The sound grew louder. My heart stuttered, dread pouring through me like ice water. I shook my head, whispering to myself over and over, "No, no, 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 no." The TV clicked back on. The static returned. White noise that hissed and crackled like a snake slithering into the room. I watched in horror as the screen cleared itself, the image sharpening, my breath catching in my throat. It was the same grimy room, the same spotlight, and there in the chair was me. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't look away. The camera zoomed in slowly, dragging out the moment like it was savoring my terror. My own head was bowed forward, my body slumped, bound to the chair with thick, dark ropes. I could see the edge of my pale scar peeking from my collar. "No," I croaked, my voice barely audible over the hiss of the static. "No, that's not me. It can't be." The screen glitched, the image warping slightly as the host's distorted voice erupted through the speakers. "Welcome back to tonight's episode. Audience, your choices decide their fate." I shook my head violently, tears streaming down my face. "Stop it! Stop it!" But the voice didn't stop. "Let's get those votes in. Save or punish." The buttons appeared at the bottom of the screen. Save in pale blue, punish in blood red. The numbers began climbing instantly, faster than before. Save 12. Punish 746. "No!" I screamed, scrambling off the couch, my hands pulling at my hair. "Please, don't do this. I'm not even there. I'm right here. I'm right here." The numbers kept climbing. Punish 1402. I dropped to my knees in front of the screen, sobbing hysterically. The figure in the chair me lifted its head slightly. My face was obscured by shadows, but I could feel it. It was me. The countdown timer appeared at the top of the screen. 00:30, 00:29, 00:28. I screamed, "Stop it! Stop!" But the distorted laughter of the host drowned me out. The sound bounced off the walls, filling every inch of the room like smoke. And then, brrring. I froze. My phone. It was ringing again, loud and shrill, vibrating against the floor. My trembling hand reached for it, my mind screaming at me not to look. But I did. The screen glowed in the dark, and the caller ID read, "Incoming call. Yourself." My breath hitched. My vision swam. I didn't want to answer. God help me, I didn't want to answer. But my thumb moved on its own. I slid the screen open and pressed the phone to my ear. The host's voice whispered, quiet and distorted, as the countdown ticked to 0. "It's time to play." The screen flashed red, and everything went black.